In solo leveling, after the key to the Kartanon Temple finally had its timer reduced to 0, JinWoo left to go find out the source of his power once and for all. At his sister Gina's school after the orc attack, the bowl-cut MF is back at the site since another gate had spawned at the school back-to-back. A mysterious person started walking towards the gate, so the bowl-cut MF told him that he couldn't enter here, stopping him in his tracks. The mysterious person turned out to be none other than the one and only Sung Jin-Woo, asking how long had it been since the gate appeared. Bowl-cut responds, saying that it had been 3 days, which infuriated JinWoo since the key only said that after the timer had finished it would reveal the location, but not that it would spawn at that exact time as well. JinWoo tells Bowl-cut to call back the hunters that went in since they're in grave danger, and if they don't get out soon, they will die. Bowl-cut is confused, since the gate is only C rank, asking what he meant by them dying. JinWoo steps into the gate saying he would bring the assault squad back because there's no time to explain. Inside the dungeon, the hunters question why the door to the boss room didn't open. Not even magic could move it. It's a trap, JinWoo stated, scaring the shit out of the other hunters. Who are you? They question. I'm a survivor of a double dungeon, JinWoo stated. The hunters are still skeptical, but someone recognizes him as Hunter Sung Jin-Woo, the S-rank Sung Jin-Woo. JinWoo states how this was an extremely dangerous place, telling them to get their asses out because he would take it from here. As he tries to open the door, he questions as to why it didn't open. The system states how this was the gate to the Kartanon Temple, asking him to insert the key. JinWoo whips out the key, shocking the hunters watching as to how he was able to open the gate since it didn't budge at all when they tried. The leader of the party states how he didn't have the right to tell them to leave because their unknown guild was the one who bought the raid permit, which incited the other hunters into shouting, saying that he can't order them around just because he's an S rank. JinWoo responds, saying he won't stop them. If they really want to die, let them type shift. The MF walks inside the gate like he bout to do something, but the system states how a being without the key had entered, denying his access as a huge stone knight swings his sword towards the hunter. JinWoo grabs the hunter's armor, pulling him back before the knight could slice him open like a watermelon. Having missed his chance, the knight looks towards them with a murderous stare. JinWoo warns them that all of the monsters inside the dungeon were that strong, asking if they really wanted to enter after seeing how dangerous it really was. He said to listen well, telling them to leave the dungeon and contact the Hunter Association, and tell them that a double dungeon has appeared. As the system states how the one with the key had entered the dungeon, the gate's doors slam shut, leaving the hunters speechless. Inside the dungeon, the torches light up, the place looking exactly the same as the first time he had came here. The angel statue with the scripture at hand, and the king's statue sitting in his throne. It all began here. As JinWoo walks towards the statues, he says, "I've returned." He states how this time will be different while reminiscing of the last time he was here. "I can clearly feel it through my bones. These statues aren't monsters, nor are they living beings. They're merely puppets of someone, something, and there's only one thing that emits magic in this room. So it was you," he states while looking at the direction of a statue while tapping the floor to get a reaction out of it. JinWoo asks why it won't say anything, and why it wouldn't answer his question. But he wasn't talking to the king's statue like we would have thought. He was staring at the angel statue as it grins menacingly as it says, "At last you have arrived." The scripture containing the rules of God suddenly starts to crack. As the angel statue breaks it to absolute pieces, he says, "I see you have finally made it this far." Unimpressed, JinWoo says how the so-called commandments never meant anything after all. The angel statue grins, saying that they did mean something once, but they are not important anymore. "Are you the one who called me here?" he questions. The statue smiles, saying it was indeed him that called him here. JinWoo asked if he was a monster, but the statue said he's asking all the wrong questions, since instead of asking who he is, he should be asking who his true self is. The Stone Knights awaken as he said this would be his final test, and if he's still standing at the end of it, he will tell him everything. That will be his reward to him. Drip Woo gets ready for battle, calling for his shadow soldiers. But the angel says how that won't do since no cheating is allowed. He's the only one he wishes to assess. He doesn't give a flying fuck about his servant's abilities, sealing most of the perks he received from the system. So this is how it's gonna be, huh? JinWoo states, disappointed by the fact that all the cards in his hands ended up being useless. A stone knight suddenly rushes towards Drip Woo. Though he can't use most of his abilities, he can still use his inventory. Since that's the case, he will just beat the fuck out of everyone with absolute brute strength. As the knight's sword is about to make impact with Drip Woo, he manages to catch it with a single arm, while raising his other hand, breaking the sword in half like a piece of cardboard. With the broken sword, he suddenly throws it, hitting the MF right in the face between the gaps of his armor. As it tries to remove the sword from its cranium, JinWoo kicks the sword deep in its skull before it could even pull it out. As another knight rushes towards Rizzy Woo, he prepares to counterattack, slicing the axe in half like it was butter as he leaps into the air, cleaving the knight's skull with his daggers. He states how they just keep coming after him relentlessly, no matter how many he destroys. He turns around to see that the god's statue started charging up its attack, and since it was too late to dodge it, he activates the skill Commander's Touch, lifting the stone knights, blocking the god statue's insanely powerful laser beam attack as it grins while shooting it. The attack being so strong that it raises his skill to its final form, the Commander's Authority. Though the shield made of statues melted due to the attack, Drippy Woo managed to dodge it, stepping to the side, thinking that if he wants to win this, he'll have to get rid of that guy first, stomping as the ground gets crushed as he leaps towards the behemoth with immeasurable speed. The statue isn't gonna let this slide, raising its feet, then stomping on the ground, completely destroying everything around him. The statue smiles, thinking that it finally got rid of the annoying ant, but that couldn't be further from the truth as a flashing light could be seen below him. JinWoo comes flying out of the smoke straight for the statue, making it charge its beam attack once more. JinWoo thinks if he combines his speed with his Dominator's Authority skill, he'd be able to go straight for his blind spot, attaching his skill to its shoulder, and like Spider-Man, he flings himself towards it, dodging the statue's laser beam. JinWoo is relieved that it had worked, saying that the upgrade made a huge difference since it worked on a target as large as this. Riz Woo manages to land on its shoulder, activating his skill, Mutilation, slashing its face with immense speed, though this shocked Rizzy Woo since it didn't work, even though the Demon King's dagger could slice through anything, but it only left a scratch on the statue's face. But if he can't slice through it, he'll just aim for a crevice, landing on its face, clenching his fist, charging his attack, and punching the living shit out of it with pure strength. The angel statue states how he never would have thought he'd use that kind of attack against one of his creations, as JinWoo charges up his attack again, punching it right in the same spot as before. As he charges his attack once more, he says, "I'll show you what it means to be level 103, punching it in the motherfucking face again." Oh, he's not grinning no more as he falls to the ground doing the Yamcha pose, creating a huge crater in the space. He lands on the floor, making the stone knights around him target him instantly. He activates his skill, Dominator's Authority, plunging the statues into the ground, making them unable to move a single inch. As the dust settles, JinWoo clenches his fist, saying how thanks to this battle, he's grown even more powerful than before. "Impressive," the angel statue says, as he descends from the sky, clapping for Drizzy Woo. He tells the angel that he better keep his promise. The angel's mask starts crumbling while he laughs, saying that the test isn't over yet since he is still here, making JinWoo nervous since he just received an urgent quest from the system. "I am your final test," the statue said, as the system states that if he doesn't defeat the enemy in 10 minutes, his heart will stop beating. JinWoo asked who the hell he was. He responds with the system saying that he told him that it was a pretty silly question, but he'll give him the answer anyways, as he grins extensively. "I am the architect of the system," the angel states while speaking with both his mouth and the system panel, asking if he's satisfied with his answer. Outside of the double dungeon, Jinchul arrives at the scene as Boldcut tells everyone from the surveillance team to move out the fucking way. Jinchul thought that even though he's gathered 7 elite hunters from the association, he already knows they aren't going to be a single bit of help, but is instead preparing for a worst-case scenario. Jinchul can feel the immense pressure coming from the gate, leaving him stricken with fear, unable to even move. As a blade grazes his neck, Jinchul asks if anyone else was picking this up, saying that he felt a terrifying storm of mana coming from the gate, making him feel like he was about to die any second. Jinchul asked his subordinate if there were any major guilds on standby, and he responds saying that the Hunters Guild is on standby to raid. He then asks about their 2 S ranks, and he responds that both Mami Cha and Choi Jong-in have both agreed to participate. Jinchul nervously tells him to put in an emergency request with the Hunters Guild, since they need their assistance quick. Inside the gate, the architect spawns 6 arms out of his back, making JinWoo nervous because of the pressure he was giving off. The final test, JinWoo versus the architect, begins now. The statue suddenly disappears from its place, appearing right next to him, as he punches him with brute strength without being able to react, sending him flying to Timbuktu, crashing into the wall. The blow being so powerful that it made JinWoo spew blood. Without being able to catch his breath, the architect launches a punch, but JinWoo managed to dodge it at the last second. But 2 more fists came flying at him point blank, as the architect Gatling punches the living shit out of him without letting up. The architect smiles, thinking this is too easy, but gets shocked by what he sees. JinWoo managed to block every single punch that was being thrown at him, staring deep into the eyes of the architect. He grins while saying he's impressive, truly impressive, saying that he's exceeding his expectations. A punch managed to land on JinWoo, making the architect think he's finally got him, but he slides on its arm, minimizing impact, delivering a shocking blow right to the architect's face, which sent him flying to the other side of the room. "Who knew I'd have so much fun fighting against a human?" he said, stating that he would have never thought a human could be a worthy opponent for him. "How very amusing," he said, as the other side of his mask crumbled, revealing his ugly side. Blood filled JinWoo's peripheral vision as he tells the architect that he still has loads of questions to ask him, why he constructed the system, why he chose him as its player, and what's happening to the world right now. The architect suddenly rushes at him, saying if he really wanted to know, and if he thinks he might not get all the answers he wants after killing him. JinWoo dashes towards him, but since close combat puts him at a disadvantage, he activates the skill Dominator's Authority. The architect realizes he's trying to attack from a distance, activating the same exact skill, counteracting JinWoo's attack, which caused him to get pushed back by the explosion caused by both skills colliding. Since he can use the exact same skill as him, attacking from a distance is pointless. The architect grins, saying that it didn't matter, whether he killed him or not. The answers he will receive are already predetermined, spawning weapons out of thin air, each hand holding a different weapon, as he says that the answers he's getting were predetermined since the moment he even designed the system. Confused, JinWoo asks how the architect was even able to design something like this, asking how he was able to give him such powers. He responds, saying that he did not only not choose him, but was in fact against the idea of him becoming the player, saying he's simply the architect and moderator of the player breeding system. Since his design is perfect, it meant whoever the system chose was the best possible candidate to inherit it. The architect leaps into the air, saying that for the remaining time he'll go all out, crushing the ground below him. JinWoo dashes towards him as they clash with immeasurable speeds. As the fight goes on, JinWoo can feel that his senses are getting sharper, gaining the confidence to think he can actually beat him. A long sword, spear, and blade to his right, axe and hammer to his left. He can finally feel every single move he's making, dodging every single attack that was thrown at him. The architect's mask starts to crack. He's confused as to how he is able to block every single one of his attacks and even counterattack. Even though he's using his full strength, he's getting even faster, ending with one of his arms getting sliced off. The architect can't believe his eyes. He may be in a fake body, but JinWoo being able to inflict pain on him is absolutely shocking for him. He finally understands the reason why JinWoo was chosen as the player of the system. The architect states how it may only be a small fraction, but it's mixed in there. He starts crashing out, shouting that he's just a mere human, saying, "How dare you!" With 3 minutes left on the timer, the previously defeated Stone Knights start awakening, as well as God's statue. Since he doesn't have much time left, JinWoo lunges forward, leaping straight into the tiger's den. He activates the skill Dominator's Authority, punching the ground with immense strength, dispersing the statues. As he dashes towards the next enemy, a huge fist crushes the spot JinWoo was standing on, but misses terribly since he managed to dodge it. He dashes straight for the Architect as rapid clashes between both of them ensue. He manages to cut off two of the statue's arms, but the statue counterattacks, grazing his stomach. As he jumped backwards, he was attacked by an unknown assailant, shocking JinWoo. He turns back, angering him since it was the same statue who had cut off his leg the first time he was here. He leaps towards the shield statue, crushing its head in one fell swoop, looking back at the Architect with a murderous gaze, making him start yelling for some reason. With 2 minutes and 21 seconds left on the timer, JinWoo manages to slash off two more of the Architect's arms as a huge explosion occurs because of the battle. 2 minutes and 14 seconds left on the timer, the smoke starts clearing up. JinWoo points his dagger towards the Architect's neck as he says, "I've lost. The test is over." His body is in complete shambles as the battle ends with 2 minutes and 11 seconds left on the timer. He points towards him, saying that the answer is within him. JinWoo gets confused as to what he meant by within him as a system panel pops up asking if he wanted the data stored in his memory to be retrieved. He says, "The choice is yours." JinWoo is unsure if going through with this would be the best course of action, but after thinking for a while, he says, "Yes, I accept." Golden light suddenly starts exuding all around him, pushing him back as the light shines so bright nothing else can be perceived. Inside a shadowy realm, an army of millions of monsters can be seen marching through a canyon. In a spiritual form, JinWoo is in absolute astonishment seeing all of them jumbled up. Weirdly enough, every single one of the monsters can be seen looking up at the sky. JinWoo glances behind him, asking what they were looking at, leading him to be in utter shock. Multiple enormous-sized gates could be seen covering the sky, seeming just as big as the single gate that had appeared in Japan. A purple sky and hordes of monsters. This place can't possibly be Earth, he thought to himself. If this army made up of ice elves, high orcs, goblins, giants, and countless other species were to invade Earth, even the entire human race wouldn't stand a chance against them. One of the gates in the sky starts to crack, shattering the entrance into pieces as angel-like figures cross through the gate. It didn't take long to figure out what would happen next. Hundreds of thousands of angels start gushing out of the shattered gates in the sky, shocking JinWoo as he's witnessing the sight in front of him. One of the angels blows a war horn as an all-out war between the silver soldiers and the monsters break out. The sounds of clashing weapons and crushed armor filled the air. Pools of blood began to stain the battlefield as the war cries quickly turned into screams of agony. The silver soldiers were absolutely dominating in the minor scuffle, but just as they were about to take the victory royale, they suddenly came to a halt. A shadowy being steps into the fray, nonchalantly saying the word, "Arise." JinWoo notices the skill he's using as the domain of the monarch envelops the entire battlefield, reviving every single monster that had fallen in battle using the skill shadow extraction. JinWoo is in complete awe, asking himself if he was the monarch of the shadows. Immortality, an army that never dies. The monsters sacrificed their lives, but death wasn't the end for them. Their blood grew dark and dense, granting them a newfound strength. As JinWoo watches this unfold, he can't help but be astonished by the fact he can summon so many shadow soldiers. Even he can't compare to someone like that. The fallen monsters emerged from death's embrace and stormed towards the silver soldiers. Even though their bodies could be slashed to pieces, they would regenerate in the fraction of a second like nothing ever happened. The black and silver armies became entangled in a fierce battle. Explosions erupted and the ground shook beneath them. Even though the silver soldiers would have won the battle by a landslide, the appearance of a single individual had turned the tides completely. The Shadow Monarch pulls out an enormous blade, and as his horse roars, he manages to destroy multiple soldiers in a single slash. Then, as the horse kept dashing forward, he activates the skill Dominator's Authority, crushing the soldiers with ease. This left Drip Woo in absolutely shock before the might the previous Shadow Monarch displayed. The Shadow Soldiers had repeated the cycle of death and revival to wipe out their enemies. Wherever the Monarch went, a trail of destruction was left in his wake. The Shadow Army getting the victory royale seemed imminent. That is until they showed up. As Drippy Woo is busy watching the memories of the previous Shadow Monarch, a group of hunters arrives at the entrance of the double dungeon as the guild leader of the Hunters Guild says how there's tremendous amounts of mana coming from the gate. Hunter Choi asks if Rizzy Woo was inside. Jin Chul responds saying he's positive. Mommy Cha is confused since the mana leaking from the gate isn't Drippy Woo's, asking herself who could it belong to. Jin Chul starts flashing back when Rizzy Woo said he wasn't the one who cleared the double dungeon, confused as to why he came back here. It can't possibly be a coincidence, he said as they open the gate, getting absolutely shocked after finding the room completely destroyed. Jin Chul couldn't believe his eyes. The statue of God and the stone sculptures actually existed after all. The architect senses the presence of the humans, saying that he didn't recall inviting them here. This is another unexpected surprise, he said, staring down at the hunters with a menacing look. The hunters are freaked out, asking themselves if they were just hearing things since a monster just spoke their language. With a smile, he tells them to shut the fuck up, telling them how dare they disturb the king's nappy time. The hunters are confused as to who he referred to as king, and look towards the direction where Drippy Woo is just standing there in front of a large crater without moving a single inch. One of the hunters asks what he was doing over there, but suddenly gets slashed after the architect cut down 3 nameless hunters in a single slash. Mommy Cha is in complete shock since she couldn't even react to his attack. The architect laughs, saying that these strong humans would make a great offering to the king, referring to Rizzy Woo, who was still watching the memories of the previous Shadow Monarch without knowing what was happening outside. Both the Shadow Monarch and Rizzy Woo seem to be looking at a certain direction. 2 giant red and blue gates that look like Gojo's hollow purple can be seen. Out of the blue gate, an army made up of demons came marching out with the flags from clans such as Ricardo, Peitos, even the Radiru clan, which this girl came from. Out of the red gate, an enormous-sized wolf came walking out, towering over an army made up of beast monsters. The Demon King Baran, the Monarch of Flames, and the King of Beasts, Monarch of Fangs, both face off against the Monarch of Shadows. Next time, in the next episode of Solo Rizzy Leveling, back to reality, the healers try their hardest to heal the hunter, who was struck down by the architect as Choi Jong-in orders them to take the wounded to the back, yelling, "Here they come," as the stone statues get ready to attack. The architect tells them that anyone who is still alive by the time his puppets collapse, they would be given the great honor of witnessing the king's birth, if any of them manage to survive, that is. God's statue starts activating his laser beam ability, leading to Hunter Choi telling everyone to watch out. He shoots out an enormous blast, completely destroying everything in front of him, but Hunter Choi manages to dodge the attack, activating one of his spells, which hit the statue right in the face with exquisite speed. Hunter Choi shouts to his subordinates to use this chance to destroy the statues, while the big statue is distracted by his attack. Jin Chul launches himself forward as fast as he could, hitting one of the statues right in the mother face, but gets shocked, since the statue didn't move a single inch after taking his maximum-powered punch. The statue's face suddenly gets blasted as the S-ranker Choi shouts, saying that the statues had a high resistance to physical attacks. But since the spell he just used had absolutely no effect, it meant that the statues also had magical resistance. The hunters are extremely overwhelmed, saying that none of their skills, such as taunting or psychokinesis, work against the statues. The guildmaster tries to think of a plan quickly, or they will all die in here. He suddenly looks towards the direction where Rizzy Woo is standing, thinking that they need to wake him up since he's the last option they have left. He launches a spell towards him, attempting to wake him up. But as the spell is about to make impact with Rizzy Woo, the architect steps in, blocking the attack, completely shocking Guildmaster Choi. The architect launches himself towards Choi, yelling, saying how dare he try to disturb the king in his slumber. Multiple hunters rush out from behind him, blocking the architect's rampage. Jin-Chul quickly shouts towards Mommy Cha, telling her that they would take care of everything here and that she should go wake up Rizzy Woo. She dashes towards him. As she's about to reach him, the panel cuts over inside Drip Woo's mind, where a battle between the demon clans and beasts versus the Shadow Army ensues. The Shadow Soldiers revive infinitely, no matter how many times they're destroyed, leaving Drip Woo astonished, since if it was him, his mana would have run out long ago, almost like he has a bottomless pit of mana. Both the demon clans and the beast monster army were slaughtering the Shadow Soldiers in a 2v1. JinWoo asks himself if either the Shadow Monarch wasn't on the same side of the monsters, or there was internal conflict among them. As the battle comes to an end, the Shadow Monarch walks towards the defeated leader of the demon army and says how they had the chance to end the war today, asking why he betrayed him. The defeated commander responds, saying that it was a shame since he didn't manage to kill him in the end. With a serious face, the Shadow Monarch asks again, "Why did you betray me?" The Guildmaster states how they must wake up Hunter Sung Drip Woo, since there was no other option to make it out alive. Mommy Cha suddenly dashes towards the unconscious Rizzy Woo, only for the architect to launch an attack against her, but she manages to dodge it in the last second. The architect commends her for dodging his attack, saying it was impressive, but suddenly notices that there was a lingering shadow soldier hanging around in Mommy Cha's body. The architect says how it can't come out because of the rules of the dungeon, but its existence isn't doubted. He is surprised the king planted a shadow soldier on her, asking what her relationship with Sung Jin-Woo is. Mommy Cha responds, saying that she's a friend of Rizzy Woo and that she came to save him. The architect laughs, saying that it wasn't something the king did, and offers her an opportunity. Today is the day where one of the greatest monarchs would descend upon this world. The architect gives her the chance to witness this glorious event, but every single one of her little friends will die right here in this dungeon. A sudden voice could be heard in the distance saying, "Not today, buddy," as Drippy Woo punches the architect square in the jaw, dislocating it completely. As the architect's body crumbles, Rizzy Woo asks, "You, what have you done to my body?" since he now possessed an extra heart instead of one. Jin-Chul, Guildmaster Choi, Mommy Cha all feel relieved since the one and only Rizzy Woo finally descended to the battle. As the architect's body slams into the ground, he says, you are not the king," asking how is it even possible that he's here instead of him, and how he was able to regain his consciousness with the black heart inside his body. Rizzy Woo finally realizes that the reason why he gained such an absurd amounts of mana just now was due to the black heart, which had raised his mana from a mere 9,000 to a whopping 100,000. Judging by his reaction, he can tell that the black heart wasn't the architect's doing, and that it wasn't meant to be used to his benefit. The recalled data also didn't answer all of the questions he had. He tells him how he said he was against him becoming a player, but what exactly is a player? He hopes that he would enlighten him about what a player actually is, and what he planned on doing to him. The architect refuses to believe the situation until he realizes something which made him start crashing out, screaming, "How dare you, Shadow Monarch? You think the other monarchs will just let this happen?" Drippy Woo pulls out multiple daggers, pointing them straight at the architect's face, telling him to answer his questions. The architect starts laughing, saying he sure is an unpredictable one, and said that he has an idea as to why he was the one chosen by the system. The fodder hunters are in utter disbelief, as the statues that hadn't moved thus far started waking up. The architect states how if he were to be killed now, no one would be able to stop his puppets. Drippy Woo asks what would happen if he killed him, and then his puppets. He responds saying that if he killed him, the architect of the system, I could return to being an E-rank hunter again, Drippy Woo said, cutting him off. He said that he thought about it, but the existing system won't fall apart. If the architect disappears now, would it? The architect is in utter shock since Drippy Woo called his bluff, saying that if that's the case, he would just forcefully... Before he could finish his sentence, messages appeared blocking his access even though he was the administrator. As Drippy Woo stands there exuding aura, he said he once thought about it, devouring the entire system whole. He says how his design isn't perfect after all as the architect starts shouting, "How dare you!" But before he could continue yapping, Drippy Woo had cut him to pieces. The architect, before his final breath, said he had a prophecy for him. When the pillars of fire that hold the heavens are raised, there will be an inevitable death approaching your way. Sung Jin-Woo looks back with a cold look and says, "As you please." Drippy Woo looks back saying that he doesn't give a flying fuck. Outside the gate, weak hunters discuss about what was happening inside the gate since it had been an hour since the Hunters Guild went in, saying that if they themselves went in, they would have surely been screwed. Someone announces that the hunters were finally coming out of the gate, but were completely beaten and battered since it could be seen that they had multiple injuries. The fodder hunters were in utter shock, since the elites of the Hunters Guild came out looking like that after raiding a gate that was just supposed to be C rank. Jin-Chul walks up to the hunters, asking if they could help carry the deceased, which shocked them even more since people actually died inside the gate. A few minutes later, Drippy Woo came walking outside the gate nonchalantly, thinking that since the architect was gone now, it's a shame that he didn't get an answer to all his questions. Jin-Chul tells Drippy Woo that 20 of the top-rank elite hunters had died inside. If this had been a dungeon break, the extent of the damage would have been unimaginable, and is astonished that he tried to stop all of that alone. Drippy Woo looks down at the row of corpses, saying that he only survived because of the aid of the Hunters Guild and the monitoring division. Jin-Chul said he knew he had entered the dungeon, but since the mana leaking out of it was so potent, he requested help from the Hunters Guild, but it still resulted in such a tragedy. Jin-Chul asks him how he found that the double dungeon was in this particular gate, and he responded saying that it had summoned him here. Jin-Chul doesn't seem to understand, so Jin-Woo tells him that he had received a message telling him to come here. Jin-Chul asks if they could see that message, but Drip Woo tells him it's a message that's only visible inside his head. Although Jin-Chul is still confused, he doesn't think he'd be joking at a time like this where there are casualties. Mommy Cha walks up to Jin-Woo asking if he was all right. He responds saying he's fine, but maybe just a little tired, falling to the ground completely exhausted of his strength.